Hi everyone, you're welcome back to my YouTube channel once again. In today's tutorial, we are going to be learning how to make this off-shoulder wrap top with double sleeves. To see the tutorial on how I made this gathered skirt, click this link at the top of your screen. So I made use of an Ankara print fabric, and the amount of the fabric I used in achieving this wrap top is 2 yards. So I'll go ahead to draft a basic bodice pattern which I would be using as a template in making the wrap top. So guys, I've ruled out a straight line, which is the shoulder line. So from my shoulder line, I'm marking down to 9.5 inches, which is my bust point or nipple point. Then from the shoulder again, I marked the full length of my top. And since it's a crop top, I marked 17 inches. Now I ruled a straight line across this point. I marked a neck width of 3 inches. For the neck depth, I marked 1.5 inches. Now I connected the neck width to the neck depth to form a curved neckline. On the shoulder line, I placed my shoulder measurement divided by 2, which is 7 inches. To get the shoulder slope, I placed my tape below the shoulder measurement to mark 1 inch and connected the point to the neck width. To mark the chest line, I divided my bust circumference by 6 and I added 1.5 inches extra to that, which made it 7.2 inches. Now I ruled a straight line across this point, and this new line is called the chest line. Now I connected the tip of the shoulder vertically downwards to the chest line using dotted lines. The next step is to place the tape on the armhole line, then fold the tape into two to mark the midpoint of the armhole line. Now from this point I marked, I would go in by ½ inch, and on the chest line I placed my bust circumference divided by 4. Now I connected the bust circumference to the midpoint of the armhole line, then connected the midpoint to the tip of the shoulder line. The next step is to mark the waist dart, and to do this you divide your nipple to nipple distance by 2, then add ½ inch to that. So I marked 3.5 inches on the waistline and 3.5 inches on the bust point line. To connect both points together, now I marked ½ inch on both sides of the waist dart. To connect the points to the top of the dart line, on the waistline I placed my waist circumference divided by 4. Now the distance between these two dots is 1 inch, so I added the 1 inch back. Now I connected the bust circumference to the waist circumference. Now I'll go ahead to trim out the edges. So this is the basic bodice for the back piece. And since this is an off shoulder top, I would have to take out the upper part. To do this, I'll be subtracting 5.5 inches away from the top of the shoulder. For a plus size person, you should subtract 6 inches. Now I'm going to rule a straight line across this point. So this new line is called the neckline. The next step is to trim out the neckline. The next step is to place the template of the back piece on my actual fabric. Now recall that when I made the pattern, I didn't add allowances to it because the allowances will be added to the main fabric. So I added 1 inch folding allowance to the neckline, and on the armhole I left it that way. For the side I added 1.5 inches, and for the bottom I added 1 inch. Getting the basic bodies for the front piece is very simple. All you have to do is to manipulate the back piece. For the front piece, you'd notice that the wrap top has a sweetheart neck. To achieve the neckline, I would connect the tip of my neckline to the center of the chest line using the curved side of the ruler. If you would like to reveal your cleavage, then you should mark 1 inch below the chest line to connect it to the tip of the neckline. But with this neckline I have here, my bust won't be revealed. Now I went ahead to trim out the neckline for the front piece. The basic bodice for the front piece is ready. Now I folded my main fabric into two, then placed the template directly on the folded fabric, making sure I kept a distance of 1.5 inches from this folded side of the fabric. And at the bottom, I left a distance of 1 inch. Now I'll go ahead to add 1.5 inches sewing allowance to the side because that is the exact allowance I added to the back piece of the top. And on the armhole, I'll just trace out exactly the same armhole shape. Now for the neckline, I would add 1 inch allowance to the top, and I stopped drilling the line when I got to the center of the folded template. Now for the bottom of the top, I added 1 inch sewing allowance as well. To get the wrap extension, I took the measurements of the waist circumference with the sewing allowance included. Here I have it to be 9.5 inches. I'll go ahead to duplicate this 9.5 inches by placing it from the center of this line to mark 9.5 inches as well. Now on this new point I marked 9.5 inches. I extended my tape vertically upwards to mark 2 inches. Then connected these 2 points together. So this is how easy it is to make the front piece. Now I'll go ahead to trim out the front piece following the direction of the chalk.
You're pulling on my walls down. I've never been exposed like this before. I'm good at shutting you out.
After cutting, you should have two pieces for the front piece. Now the next step is to secure the neckline of the front piece by folding the edges in by ½ inch and further folding it in by ½ inch. I would also secure the neckline for the other side of the front piece. Now this is the back piece. I took this to the sewing machine to stitch the neckline of the back piece by folding it in ½ inch in and further folding by ½ inch. So I've secured the neckline for the back piece. The next step is to mark the waist dart. So I folded the back piece into two, then placed the template directly on the back piece. I went ahead to mark the waist dart. After marking the waist dart, I notched it, and then I want the length of my waist dart to be 7 inches long. I will go ahead to take the back piece to the sewing machine to stitch the dart by ½ inch. Alright, so I've stitched the dart, and because of this dart that has been secured, you would notice that the waistline isn't equal anymore. To eliminate these slant edges, I placed the straight side of my ruler to rule a straight line. Now I trimmed out the slant edges. But for the front piece of the wrap top, I won't be including a waist dart as it isn't necessary due to this folding effect. The next step is on how to make the sleeve. This wrap top has a double sleeve design. The upper sleeve is shorter than the lower sleeve. I folded the fabric into two, and for the width of this fabric, I used my shoulder measurement. My shoulder measurement is 14 inches. So the width of the sleeve is 14 inches. Now for the length, the upper part of the sleeve I used 10 inches, while for the lower part of the sleeve I used 14 inches. So this is just for one sleeve. Make sure you cut exactly the same shape and size for the second sleeve. Now I took this to the sewing machine to stitch the hem of the upper sleeve by half inch and further folding it by half inch. And also I stitched the hem of the lower sleeve by folding it half inch in and further folding it by half inch. I have folded the hem of the sleeves. Now I placed the upper sleeve directly on the lower sleeve, making sure that the top of the sleeves are equal. I'll go ahead to fold the sleeve into two.
I've never been exposed like this before. I'm good at shutting you out. I've always had a way of keeping close.
The next step is to mark the armhole on the sleeve. To do this, I folded the back piece of the top into two, then placed it on the edge of the sleeve, keeping a distance of 1 inch from the top of the sleeve. So this 1 inch distance at the top is for the elastic casing on the sleeve. Now I'll go ahead to trace out the armhole. And when I got to this point, I slanted it a little outward. So I'll be cutting out the armhole on the sleeve. Now make sure you place it on the second sleeve to trim out exactly the same shape. Now I folded the top of the sleeve in such a way that a half-inch elastic band can be inserted into the elastic casing. To know the length of the elastic that should be inserted into the elastic casing, I divided my shoulder measurements by 2, which is 14 divided by 2, and that is 7 inches. Then I subtracted 1 inch, which made it 6 inches. So the length of the elastic is 6 inches. Now I went ahead to insert the elastic into the elastic casing. So I've inserted the elastic. By this edge, I'll adjust the elastic to the end, then use a pin to hold down the elastic. And on this other edge, I would also use a pin to hold down the elastic. After this has been done, I repeated the same process for the second sleeve. The next step is to attach the sleeves to the armhole of both the front piece and the back piece. So this is my back piece here. I pinned one side of the armhole on the sleeves to the armhole of the back piece. I'll take this to the sewing machine to stitch by half inch. Now I would also place the armhole on the sleeve from this side to the back piece of the armhole as well to stitch by half inch. Now I placed one side of the front piece directly on this side, then flipped it to the wrong side to stitch the armhole of the front piece to the sleeve by half inch here. And then I also placed the second side of the front piece to flip it this way and then stitched the armhole by half inch as well. After stitching the armholes together, I placed the front piece on the back piece to stitch the side. The sides have been stitched properly. The next step is to secure the hem of the top by folding it in half inch and further folding it by half inch. The next step is to make the waist belt that would be attached to the wrap extension. The width of this belt is 3 inches, while the length is 45 inches. Now I folded the belt into two to secure the edges by stitching this side and then stitching this side, and I stopped stitching when I got to this point, so there will be an opening here to turn the belt to the right side of the fabric. Now from this opening on the belt, I folded the edges inside the opening by 1 inch. Now I inserted one side of the wrap extension into the opening. So I'm just going to flip this to the other side just to confirm that the extension is properly inserted into the hole. Once I've confirmed it, I'll go ahead to pin it together. Then take this to the sewing machine to stitch. I repeated the same sewing process for the second belt. Alright guys, this is the final outcome of the top. You should give it a try, and if you are new to my channel, kindly subscribe. See you in my next tutorial.